All right, last one for me of the fall. We're going to talk about pain tonight. It's a pretty big topic. It's obviously a lot of different types of pain. I'm really going to focus on kind of the big one, which would be like arthritis and different types of arthritis. There's 100 reasons people have pain. People have headaches, migraines, people have stomach pains, people stub their toe in the middle of the night. It's all kinds of pain that people have, but I really am going to focus on the chronic pain and some of the more serious issues. If you have other specific questions about other types of pain, because it is such a complicated, comprehensive subject, then you know, feel free to ask at the end. But I want to give some definitions of pain, and with Roman numeral 1. And this is straight out of the Merriam-Webster dictionary, but basically a localized physical suffering associated with a bodily disorder, so as a disease or an injury. And, of course, acute mental or emotional distress or suffering, B, can be another type of pain. And then I didn't put in there, you know, the other definition would be like, you know, my spouse is a pain in the neck kind of thing. So that's another type of pain. And it was actually, of course, in the dictionary, but and I, of course, don't mean that in my situation, but, yeah, we're going to talk about what it says in the medical dictionary, because it's a little bit different of how they explain pain. And I highlighted a couple things that I thought were interesting that come from the medical dictionary. So they get a little bit more in depth. They say pain is an unpleasant feeling conveyed to the brain by sensory neurons. So in other words, we have nerves, we have a nervous system, we have pain receptors, and something will trigger those pain receptors causing pain. The sentence I highlighted was that the various conscious and unconscious responses to both sensation and perception, including the emotional response, add further definition to the overall concept of pain. So this is really interesting that this is in here in the medical explanation, because, in other words, what this is saying is pain isn't always cut and dry. It isn't always like that we stub our toe or it's something very obvious. Sometimes we have deep-set pain that's a result of, you know, like it said, emotional issues, mental issues. We have, we're going to talk a little bit later about, and I'll just go ahead and mention it now, referred pain, where you have pain in your shoulder when you wake up, but there's really nothing wrong with your shoulder. Or a lot of times people are in chronic pain, they have long-term pain, and they're so trapped in that cycle that all they can do is talk about how they have pain and, oh, I'm just a person that has bad knees and I always have bad knees and I'm always in knee pain. And they can do some of the right things for it and still be trapped in that pain because they haven't changed their mind and their thoughts and their attitude and how they perceive that pain. So there's a lot of study and research behind the emotions and the perception and our thought process when it comes to pain as well. So I just wanted to make that point. So acute pain would be like an immediate injury. This type of pain usually goes away as the injury heals and the cause of the pain is removed. So like you get a thorn, it's a pain, you remove the thorn, it gets better. Okay, but then of course we have chronic pain, which is long-term pain, and this is what a lot of people are dealing with. It's a persistent pain, and it's very difficult to determine sometimes. And this goes for conventional medicine, and this goes even for natural medicine. A lot of times it can be tricky to find out why people are in chronic pain. I mean, some people literally have been in pain and suffering for 5, 10, 20, 30 years, and they've tried everything. You know, you hear that all the time. I've tried everything. So, and they're just still looking for a solution. They're still looking for an answer. That's more of a chronic pain type of situation. I thought it was interesting that in the medical definition, they describe chronic pain as changes at the molecular level. They are dramatic and may include alterations in genetic transcription. So in other words, what they're saying is it comes down to the molecular level. It comes down to the cellular level. And that's something we don't think about. We think, well, my knee hurts. Well, we don't think about how we're comprised of millions and trillions of cells, and it's the health of each one of those cells all the way down to the cellular and the molecular level where actually that pain is coming from. These changes may also occur in the absence of an identifiable cause. One of the frustrating aspects of chronic pain is that the stimulus may be unknown. So, for example, it says as much as 85% of individuals suffering from lower back pain, the pain's unknown. Well, that seems a little much to me. I mean, a lot of times we know what's causing the lower back pain. But again, we can have referred pain and have pain in the back, and it has nothing to do with our back. And I learned this a long time ago, that over half the people who have back pain, you know, I think there's a common assumption that when people have back pain, they think there's a problem with their spine. Oh, I have a lower spine problem. I just go to a chiropractor and I need some adjustments because I have lower back pain. Well, it's well known now that well over half the people who have lower back pain have no problem with their lower spine. People have kidney issues. People have adrenal issues. People have constipation, causes constant back pain. There's all kinds of different reasons that we can have the pain. And a lot of times the trick, like we might know a solution to pain, but sometimes the trick is finding out, well, why we have the pain. What's the original causation of the pain? It's interesting working at a colon hydrotherapy center and a wellness center. We had a lady one time who had a frozen shoulder. And she had pain in her shoulder and a frozen shoulder where she couldn't move it. And after getting a series of colonics, cleaning out her colon, her shoulder started moving again, and there was no pain. And who would ever think that my shoulder pain and my frozen shoulder was because my colon's blocked? We don't make those connections. And that's one thing that natural medicine really tries to do, is they really try to find out what's the root cause of your pain. So Roman numeral 2, the major types of pain. We have the big one. We have arthritis. Arthritis, inflammation of joints, and this is out of the dictionary as well. Inflammation of joints due to infections, metabolic or constitutional causes, or we can have a specific arthritic condition. Constitutional causes, that can be your back problems, you were in a car accident, you're overweight, and so you have extra, weight bearing on your joints, so it causes bad knees or a bad hip. So that's some constitutional reasons. The arthritic conditions, like it mentions gout, that's a really interesting one. I've mentioned that before. Gout, if you're familiar with gout or know anyone who's had gout, gout usually originates where? In the big toe. And because a lot of arthritis is a toxicity condition where the body's depositing toxins in the joints because there's too many toxins in our body, the body in its intelligent design by God will put the poisons as far away from the important internal organs as possible. So the area with the least circulation in the body where the poison can do the least damage is the big toe. So that's why the gout starts in the big toe and then it spreads from there. That's where the body intelligently puts the poison to keep you safe, but while still keeping the poison out of the bloodstream. Arthritis actually has over 100 different diseases named. There's over 100 diseases named that are some type of arthritic condition. 40 million Americans are literally crippled from some type of arthritic pain condition. It's the number one crippling disease. I mean, what's the number one reason people go to the hospital or the doctor? It's pain. There's some sort of pain. It's the number one reason people go. And chronic pain affects over 80% of people who are over the age of 50. 80% of people. And it's really unfortunate because there's still cultures around the world where people are living and they're 90 and 100 and 110 and they have no pain. They have no pain. So there's reasons that we have pain. So we really want to get into talking to some of that. Unfortunately, in the conventional medical community, there's not a lot of different options offered. The two main ones are, and I'm not saying these are the only two, because a lot of people are referred to physical therapists and other different modalities that can be beneficial for pain. But in general, people are giving drugs. People are giving drugs to cover up and mask the pain. And sometimes that's necessary. And in the short term, sometimes that's necessary. But we never want that to be a long-term solution. And there's always a lot of side effects from taking drugs. The NSAIDs, the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, alone send 76,000 people to the hospital. And I think that's an old statistic because I've read over 100,000 people each year go to the hospital from these non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. And over 10,000 people die every year from non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. I mean, just aspirin alone kills almost 10,000 people a year. And we take it like it's not a big deal. And I'm not saying there's not a time and a place for it, but it's not preventative medicine. It's not prevention of heart disease. It's not the answer to why you have chronic headaches. You know, we need to look deeper. We need to explore further into this. And then the other option we're often given is surgery, which a lot of people, when they don't have any other options, when they've lost total mobility, can benefit from surgery. But knowing that there's a way to prevent it, knowing that there's a way to heal the body, knowing that God created a body that does and can and will heal itself, we obviously want to avoid surgery. We want that to be the last option. Because often what happens is people go to the hospital and they're in pain and they're given drugs and they're covering up the pain. And because they're just covering up the pain, well, the damaged area keeps getting worse and worse and worse because you keep using it, you keep walking on it, you keep moving that joint, and it keeps degenerating. You're covering up the pain so you don't really necessarily feel the pain, and all of a sudden it's so bad you don't have an option but to get a new knee or a new hip or a new, whatever. So more specific in arthritis is osteoarthritis. So this is a degenerative joint condition. This is where people have their bad back and bad hips and bad knees. And it usually involves cartilage damage, hardening of the cartilage, and bone spurs is often a result of this osteoarthritis. A lot of people get the beginning feelings of this because they notice the weather changes and they feel the damp, cold. This time of year, they start to feel that arthritis. A lot of people will move to Phoenix and Vegas and California and Florida so that their joints don't hurt because the dampness and the coldness kind of is constricting, and you can start to feel that pain more. What's important to understand is that a lot of these non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like aspirin and Motrin actually promote the progression of these illnesses because they stop collagen and healthy tissue from forming properly. So the drugs that we're giving to cover up the pain actually, in the long term, make it worse. And this is pretty well known now as well. Rheumatoid arthritis. This is everybody probably knows someone who has dealt with rheumatoid arthritis. It's an autoimmune condition where the body's actually attacking its own synovial membranes, the synovial fluid, the membranes that cushion the joints. The immune system's actually attacking the own body, which obviously isn't normal. You know, God did not design a body that attacks itself. There's a reason that the immune system is confused and it's attacking itself. So again, we got to not just cover up the pain. We have to find out why is the immune system out of control? Why is the body attacking itself? Because that's obviously not normal. And what's interesting about rheumatoid arthritis, it's mostly women that's affected. That's interesting in and of itself. And there's a lot of other issues that usually come along with it. There's usually infections, people are anemic, people have chronic bowel conditions, lung issues, liver issues. And we know a lot of the causes of autoimmune conditions. One of the big ones is the foods we're eating, mineral deficiencies, weakness in the glandular system, specifically the adrenals, weakness in the immune system, the spleen, I highlighted, is very often compromised when it comes to rheumatoid arthritis. Prolonged use of aspirin and steroids can actually cause rheumatoid arthritis because they really weaken and wipe out the immune system. And then letter B, we have myalgia, fibromyalgia, which again is pretty common these days, unfortunately. And what happens in fibromyalgia is where excessive acidic tissues, acid builds up in the muscles of the body. And the body tries to repair that damage because it creates scar tissue. And whenever there's scar tissue, what does the body do? Well, the body repairs itself. There's protein structures called fibrin or fibrinolytic tissue. So part of the repair mechanism, if you have any scars anywhere in your body and you see that little buildup of scar tissue, that's called fibrin. And that's how the body heals itself. But what happens is we get toxins in the muscles, and the muscles get damaged, and so we get a buildup of this fibrin in the muscle tissues. And this makes the muscles so that they can't work, and they're irritated, and they can't function properly, and they get painful, and they get swollen, and they get inflamed. So that's fibromyalgia. And what we have to do is we have to break down that scar tissue. We have to get the toxins out. What's really interesting about a lot of these arthritic conditions is a lot of them are toxicity conditions. So as these poisons deposit in different parts of the body, like I mentioned, gout, and like I mentioned, the muscles, another one would be like in the nerves. When toxins deposit in the nerves, what do we call that? We call that multiple sclerosis. So a lot of these issues we have that we put these names on are just toxicity conditions in different parts of the body. So fibromyalgia is a toxicity condition in the muscles. All right, so let's go to Roman numeral 3, masking the pain, the dangers of pain drugs. First thing to understand is I think it's important that we just note that I don't think anybody by choice wants to be on pain medication. We do it out of necessity. We do it because we want to function and we want to have vibrant lives and we want to live without pain. And that's great. Well, unfortunately, what's not happening is we're not being told that the body can heal itself, that we can find the root cause of your pain, and you can live a good pain-free life without having to take drugs that have all these side effects. So we just don't want to rely on them long term. You know, you have a debilitating headache and you have to go to work and you have to function, and you have a family event and you need to take an aspirin to get through that, okay. But if it seems like that's every day or every other day or even once a week, it's too much. You know, let's find out why we're having headaches, why we're having pain, and let's deal with it, because we know a lot of the different reasons, and we're going to kind of go over mostly, again, the physical reasons why people have pain in their bodies. B, it's been discovered that non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, and the big ones like some of the pharmaceutical ones, Vioxx and Celebrex, you know, there are a lot of lawsuits, a lot of payouts, and some of those are off the market now. but they were actually causing heart disease, heart attacks, death, immediate death. And unfortunately, as many as 100,000 people died from heart diseases related to these drugs before they actually pulled them off the market. And that is often what happens because they don't study and research the long-term effects of these drugs. They do a couple short-term studies, and they just release them onto the market. And people take them because they work. You know, they take care of the pain, but a lot of times we don't know the long-term risks that they can be so dangerous with some of these things. So even the FDA has come out and said, hey, we need to watch our over-the-counter pain medications. We're talking basic stuff, Aleve, aspirin, ibuprofen, stuff people take every day. This was in 1994. They said, we really need to watch our use of these. But we still take them on a regular basis. And we're still not given a lot of other alternatives. So we really want to focus on what some of the alternatives are. Aleve was the first one that was added to, that was an over-the-counter one that you could just get at your drugstore that was added to the list of pharmaceuticals that is associated with heart attacks and strokes. And I gave you a whole list on the next page just because I really think it's important of all of the NSAIDs, the natural steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, because there's the brand names and there's the generic names. So I just want you to know what they all are. And you'll notice that Tylenol is not on here. That's a different class. That's an acetaminophen, but that also has its list of dangers and side effects, and you can read them right on the bottle. So these all come with a cost, in other words. So we want to figure out how to get out of pain without the negative side effects and the dangerous cost of the long-term negative effects from these drugs. I won't talk anymore about that. Let's talk about solutions. That's the fun part, knowing that we don't have to be in chronic pain. So, how to live pain-free, Roman numeral 4. It's interesting, even with what I do, that I work with a lot of people in pain. People come to me in pain. And you wouldn't think people would come to me with pain. People think they'd go to the chiropractor or, they'd go to someone else besides me. But a lot of people are realizing the link between nutrition and pain, nutrient deficiencies and pain, and heavy metals and pain, all of these different things we're going to talk about. But it's just interesting that a lot of people still don't make that connection, but and more people are. So it's really cool to see more people actually coming to me for things like pain, and I can work in conjunction with chiropractors or physical therapists or Pilates or yoga or just different types of therapies and help get people out of pain through a combination of movement and nutrition and supplements. So it's kind of neat that we're all able to work together to kind of help people with these different types of pain issues. But the first thing I want to talk about is removing obstructions. So a lot of people aren't linking diet to pain. Yeah, I have pain in my shoulder, but what would that have to do with the food I eat? And it actually has everything to do with it, because the vast majority of what we have, now of course termed, and everybody's heard of the standard American diet, which is SAD, S-A-D. The standard American diet is an inflammatory diet. I mean, literally, 90% of what is traditionally eaten, you guys are different, but traditionally what most Americans are still eating is all inflammatory foods, processed packaged foods, white flour, white sugar, even brown sugar or healthy sugar. Sugar's still inflammatory. We're drinking lots of coffee. We're doing soda. We're drinking alcohol. We're doing tons of baked goods and wheat and gluten-containing grains that are heavily processed. The entire diet is a pro-inflammation diet. And we're developing these pain issues, and then we're going to get drugs to cover up the pain. And the biggest thing you can do to get out of pain is change the way you eat. And it's one of the hardest things for me to convince some people of, but some people are really starting to get it, that the number one thing you can do to get out of pain is change the way you eat. And I could give you so many examples. One I'm thinking of is this guy, Rainier. He gave me a testimony. He let me share it on the website. But it's really interesting how I met him. We were at church. If anybody was at IHOP the night when the power went out and they couldn't do service, and they said just gather in groups of 4 and 5 and kind of get to know some people. And that's how I met him. And he told me he had this chronic knee pain. And he'd done everything for it, and he's been taking the drugs, and it's still not better. And I just said, try this. You know, I don't know the root cause of your knee pain necessarily, but try taking inflammatory foods out of your diet. Cut out the processed sugar. Cut out the gluten-containing grains. Here's some alternatives. And I think I just made him recommended that he does the magnesium oil, foot baths. And I mean, he called me a month later, and I never heard somebody so excited in my whole life, because you get somebody who's been in pain for years and years and years, and it affects their ability to function and do things with their family or do things with their children or do the sports that they enjoy or whatever, and they haven't gotten any solutions, and all of a sudden in 1 month they don't have pain, and all of a sudden the light bulb goes off that, it did have to do with the food I ate and maybe a mineral deficiency. It's like, it's life-changing and eye-opening, and then you can share like this knowledge with friends and family, and it just gets really exciting. So, especially when it comes to pain, because it just so can just take people's lives away. It can literally take people's ability to function away. So diet's key. I mentioned the back pain. You know, again, working with colon hydrotherapists, it's interesting to see how many people have chronic back pain, and they start to do some colonics and get that colon cleaned out, and guess what? That back pain's gone. They were so congested in their colon that it was actually pressing and causing back pain or shoulder pain. Headaches and migraines a lot of times cause from blockages in the colon. Why do I link this to food? Well, a lot of people have constipation. A lot of people have been eating a lot of white flour and white sugar and a lot of processed foods, and it clogs up our system. And then when that happens, that can lead to pain directly and indirectly. Indirectly because why? It can block our ability to heal and get well. When the body's blocked and clogged and congested, the blood's not flowing, nutrients aren't getting to where they're supposed to, the body doesn't heal as fast. You know, as we age, we know the body doesn't heal as fast. So it's even more important to eat well and to move and to exercise and to do the right things as we age. I gave a list of the worst offenders. You know, most people look at that list and they're like, man, it's going to be hard to eat anymore. But corn is a big one. That doesn't include sweet corn. That doesn't include good, healthy corn. It's the processed corn that's in everything. Wheat, all your gluten-containing grains, processed dairy. We're big fans of raw dairy, raw butter, raw kefir, raw milk. Those are actually very beneficial foods for bones and joints and arthritis. But it's the processed stuff. Nightshades, some people are familiar with that because they probably have to avoid them. If you have bad arthritic pain in the joints, sometimes the nightshades can trigger it. Those are tomatoes, potatoes, eggplants, and peppers. Soda goes without saying. I mean, that's just toxic, especially to the joints. Just the phosphoric acid and the colorings and the aspartame and all the components of soda pop is about the worst thing you can do for inflammation. Processed sugar, processed deli meats, nitrates that are in deli meats, bad fats. This is the big one. This is your hydrogenated fats, your vegetable cooking oils, your margarine, your fried foods. Those are some of the worst when it comes to inflammation and causing pain in the body. And they trigger that pain, and they antagonize that pain. So a lot of people are in this constant state of pain because they're eating foods that cause inflammation in the body. And there's a lot of guys that knew this stuff back in the 30s. Weston A. Price, Francis Pottinger, Dr. Royal Lee. There were lots of books on inflammation and pain and how processed foods in the 30s was already causing these problems. Number 2 is synthetic pharmaceutical drugs. We've already kind of talked about that. They mask the pain, but not only do they have their own negative side effects, but if you have knee pain and you take a drug to cover up knee pain, you're still using your knees. Your knees are just continuing to weaken and degenerate if you don't do anything to correct the knee problem. So they can be necessary for short-term pain relief. We just really want to solve the problem long-term. That is always the key, always the key. Toxins and chemicals. Number 3. Number 4, heavy metals. These are all just toxic things in our environment that build up and accumulate and can deposit in the tissues. Mercury, for example, is so very toxic to the body that it'll deposit in the tissues. And people will have pain and related issues and illnesses, overall lethargy, overall weakness, overall fatigue from mercury toxicity and have no idea what's causing it. I've given the example before of Mad as a Hatter. You know where that came from? Hat makers. They used to put mercury in the hats. It was part of the lining of the hats. And the hatters would literally go crazy from the mercury. Number 1 suicide rates profession-wise is dentists. Mercury toxicity. And we know mercury is toxic. If you break a thermometer, technically you're supposed to call like some poison control center, and they're supposed to send like a SWAT team out to barricade the whole house or something. I mean, we know the stuff is toxic. And I've seen mercury come up with people in testing that have issues with pain or, whatever their issue is. Mercury toxicity comes up and they're like, wow, yeah, I worked in a dentist office for 20 years and I used to work on, fillings, using playing with them. I shouldn't say playing with mercury. Who plays with mercury? But, using the mercury to create the fillings in a dentist's office, literally handling mercury for years and years and years. I mean, that stuff will really cause some major problems because it builds up in the body. The body doesn't have a real easy way to get rid of it. I have seen quite a few people that have MS, multiple sclerosis. Very, very rarely can I not, through talking to them in their history of what they do, what they've been exposed to, what their job was, very rarely is there not something very specific that is causing that MS. In other words, some type of toxin, some type of poison, some type of something is depositing in the nerve cells, causing the nerves to break down, the myelin sheath to break down. I had a guy one time who had MS, and I've met people who have MS who know for a fact that they've linked it to diet soda, the aspartame in diet soda. You can read lots of research on that because it destroys the nervous system and it deposits in the nervous system. I had a guy one time, it was really interesting, he had MS. He worked on the railroad for 20 years. So he's always exposed to asbestos and lots of heavy chemicals from the railroad industry. And almost every time somebody walks through my door with MS, and I'm just mentioning this because MS can be very painful. Since we're talking about pain, there's toxicity issues, some type of a chemical or a metal or something causing that pain. So again, these are things we want to explore. If we're in chronic pain, let's explore what could be building up in the body, potentially causing these long-term pain issues. All right, number 5 is infections. And, people can have stomach pains, pains in their chest from chronic lung infections, very common. A lot of times, along with asthma, comes some type of infection. People have a lot of bronchitis and pneumonia, reoccurring issues. People get fungal infections in their body, and they can set up shop in the liver, gallbladder, in the colon, parasites, viral conditions. And they can cause pain in a number of different ways because, one, if the body's busy fighting the infection all the time, like a bacterial viral infection, it makes it hard to heal the rest of the body. Kind of going back to the diet issue, too, I think that's a good point to mention, is the body spends up to 80% of its resources oftentimes digesting our foods, especially if we're not eating whole foods that God created. It's really burdensome on the body, so that knee that needs to be healed, or that toe that needs to be repaired, or that cut that needs to be healed, it's going to take a back seat because all these other functions are still going on. The immune system's overtaxed because of an infection, or you're eating so many processed foods that the digestion's bogged down, and that's where all the resources are going. So it slows our healing process. So many things we do slow our healing process. That's one of the reasons fasting is so beneficial. And so many people can benefit from fasting and heal from long-term chronic conditions because it gives the body a break, and the body can start to heal faster. That's what all animals do in nature. Anytime an animal breaks a limb or gets wounded in nature, they fast. Even when we're sick, we get a flu or infection, what do? We fast. We don't want food. The body doesn't want food. The body wants to heal itself. When people have cancer really bad, they lose their appetite, and that's not good. But the body's in such a debilitated, chronic healing crisis that it doesn't even want to try to process food. It has to try to focus on healing the cancer at hand, whatever's causing it, the infection or the toxicity or whatever it is. It's trying so hard to deal with that, it can't even deal with food. So it's important to note that that's an important way that we can heal, is to kind of take the burden off of the body. And that's why we're talking about this part A, removing these obstructions from the body so that the body can heal and repair, and so we can get out of pain. And number 6, interesting one, spine-related issues, alignment issues, and scars. This is a huge one. I mean, the chiropractor was here a couple of weeks ago and talked about the connection between the brain and the nervous system and how that affects all the organs. So how many people are in chronic pain because they have a problem with their neck or their shoulder, or their neck or somewhere else along down their spine, and it's pinching off nerves and it's affecting joints and glands and organs and different parts of their body? So corrective care with chiropractic, corrective care with physical therapy, corrective care with Pilates. I'm a huge fan of Pilates now. Of course, my wife's a certified international Pilates instructor, and just the insight that she gets at her conferences just blows me away. We sit there and talk about it for hours, about how amazing it is to correct the mechanics of the body as well to get out of pain. So it's not just, the nutrition that's part of it. It's not just looking at chemicals and toxins and mercury and metals and these types of things, but it's also the mechanics of the body. Is the spine properly aligned? Is there some scoliosis? I've had scoliosis since I was a child. It's never been fully corrected. Is it affecting my health in some way? I'm sure it is. So, a lot of us have alignment issues, structural issues as well that need to be looked at. And those different types of therapies can be critical to helping somebody to get out of pain. I'm sure I've done physical therapy. I've done Pilates. I'm sure almost everybody here has done some type of a therapy for pain. I mean, who's done some type of a physical therapy or Pilates or something for pain? Yeah, at least half of you. So that's also very important. I want to mention scars too, just because I've seen scars be so beneficial, treating scars be so beneficial in healing for so many people. Because what scars do, and I've mentioned this in a class before, is that the nervous system actually communicates through the skin as well. So when you have a physical scar, say a major surgery, say a C-section, where you have a major incision, you actually damage nerve tissues. And that actually interrupts and stops the flow of communication through the body. And that can result in pain because the body communicates through nerves and through the nervous system. And if you stop the flow of that energy or stop the flow of that communication, that can result in pain in other places in the body. So literally treating the scar with some oil, like some wheat germ oil or some sesame oil, and shining a light on it, we call it a cold laser, we have seen miraculous things happen. I can't tell you how many women I've seen who have had chronic pain in their pelvic region from hormonal issues or from childbirth or, just different reasons. And we do the oils and the light, that pain goes away. And they've had it for 15, 20 years. The pain's gone and never comes back. That's actually more of a neurological issue, a nerve-related issue, where that scar caused that physical pain. So who would relate their scar to their physical pain? You think you cut yourself, well, that's the pain. It heals, it scars over, I'm done with it. No. There can be long-term effects, negative effects in other parts of the body from scarring. So repairing scar damage can also be an important part of healing. I'll never forget the story I heard when I went to some training down in Florida about a chiropractor who had a lady who was crippled. Her arm was literally tucked under her armpit like this, and she was crippled for 20 years. And he treated her scars with a laser, and it was of all things, it was a cat bite from her cat on her finger. And they shined that light and did a few sessions on that scar on her finger, and her arm came free. And she had no more paralyzation in her arm anymore. So it shows how interconnected the body is and how, again, we have this resonating, a reverberating type of pain that we don't necessarily know the cause of it. It can be something else. So I just wanted to give you some different examples to show that, it can be a complicated issue, but we can solve it. We can find answers by trying these different things. And what's cool about it is a lot of these things that we do, especially in the natural community, is it's totally non-invasive. It's totally easy. I mean, people come in for a scar treatment, and you shine a little light on them for 5 minutes, and it's super easy. And for some people, it literally is life-changing, something so simple. Number 7, I put cleanse what needs to be cleansed. So just to kind of sum up removing the obstruction is miraculous for some people. Just not eating gluten-containing grains and processed sugar totally changes people's lives because they're not in pain and have headaches and all types of issues anymore. But sometimes that's not enough. Sometimes we change our diet and we're still blocked, we're still congested, we still have constipation, we still have toxicity in the body because it's just been so long-term. It's built up over decades. So I'm a big fan of cleansing. When it comes to mercury and things like that, some of the heavy metals, they'll hang out in the body. They'll hang out there forever unless your body will protect yourself by depositing them in places where it's not going to do a lot of damage, hopefully. But unless you actually actively do things to get them out, sometimes they'll just hang out there. So sometimes we have to actively cleanse and heal the body. So let's go to B, consuming the proper building blocks. So we want to remove some of the obstructions. Those are some of the physical obstructions. And we want to put the proper building blocks in the body. So at the very beginning, we talked about what? One of the definitions of pain was that it comes down to the molecular level. It comes down to the cellular level. God created us, and he created us with certain specific things. So we have to put the proper building blocks of the body in. You know, what are we composed of? What are our joints, tissues, ligaments, tendons, hairs, skin, nails? What's it made of? Well, the number one thing is pretty simple. Genesis 2:7, and the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground. We are dust. We are minerals. We're oxygen, minerals, and water. And what's the number one deficiency in America? It's minerals. We're mineral deficient. Why are we mineral deficient? Well, there's two reasons we're mineral deficient. One is we don't consume quality minerals. The soil's been depleted. We all know that. Even eating organic, we don't get enough good minerals. I think it's critical to supplement minerals today. If nothing else you want to supplement minerals, please. It's what we're composed of. It's what God formed us out of the earth from. And if you don't have them in your body, it can cause degenerative issues. You can link almost all illnesses to some type of a mineral deficiency. So if you don't have the proper building blocks in your body, you can either be in long-term pain or you can have the inability of the body to repair itself. Because the body always wants to repair itself, but oftentimes it cannot if it does not have these proper building blocks. So that's why it's important to really know what these building blocks are. So the minerals is definitely hands down number one. So not only do we not get enough quality minerals, but actually the standard American kind of westernized diet and lifestyle completely wipes minerals out of the system. Processed white sugar pulls minerals out of the body. Why? It's not a food and it's toxic, and the body actually uses your own mineral resources to neutralize that poison. That is osteoarthritis. One of the reasons for osteoarthritis is that the people are putting a lot of acid in their body. So processed dairy, white sugar, white bread, soda pop, it's all acid, and the body has to compensate that by taking minerals out of the bones, like calcium, to alkalize that acidic condition. So that's where osteoporosis comes from. Bone weakness and bone loss, one of the main causes is diet, because the acid has to be offset. The body has to maintain balance and homeostasis. The pH level of the blood has to stay around 7.4. So if all you're putting down in your body are these processed foods that are acidic, the body's going to compensate for that by pulling calcium from your bones. So mineral deficiencies. The number one mineral deficiency is, I talk about it every time, is magnesium. Talk about every class, magnesium comes up. So magnesium is very critical. But plant-based minerals, that's what we need to be putting in our body. Number two, healthy fats. Healthy fats are anti-inflammatory. They are critical for the nervous system and the brain. That's what you're developed with out of the womb. That first milk, the colostrum, is for the immune system, and then over half of that breast milk is fat, and it's mostly saturated fat. So we need lots of good, healthy fats for the brain, for the nervous system, for the bones, joints, ligaments, to cushion the joints, for the synovial fluid that cushions the joints, to have proper functioning spine, healthy fats. Did a whole class on good fats and bad fats. So it's really critical, you know, good fats versus bad fats, because the good fats promote everything healthy about having a healthy body and not being in pain. And the bad fats, the vegetable oils, your fried foods, donuts, and French fries, and your vegetable cooking oils and margarine do the exact opposite. They cause complete inflammation in the body. You know, heart disease is linked to what? Inflammation in the body. The number one inflammatory thing that goes in our body are these bad fats, these vegetable cooking oils and fried foods and processed sugars. So understanding fats is critical in getting out of pain. A lot of people just doing a good fish oil or cod liver oil completely just gets them out of pain. It's amazing how these fats are so beneficial to the system. And we're just chronically deficient in it. So I wanted to mention the main things we need as building blocks, because if you put the building blocks in your body, the body has the ability to repair the damage. That's the bottom line key here. The body has what it needs to repair the damage because it wants to. Believe me, God wants to heal your body all the time. So we got to give it the resources it needs to do it. Number 3 is water. Got to be hydrated. Got to have a way to get nutrients to the cells. Got to have a way to get toxins out of the cells. Water's critical for that. Greens, powerful tool against pain and inflammation, arthritis. Green foods, number of reasons. Not only the nutrient content, but also because they're like I call greens like a blood transfusion. If you do greens, they literally are. Green foods, and I got the revelation of this in prayer one time. God is light. John told us that God is light. And what foods did he give us that contain light? Well, light is transferred via photosynthesis into green plants, right? So green foods is the essence of who God is. It's the most abundant thing he gave us on this earth. And it actually is almost identical if you look at chlorophyll or green liquids from plants, almost identical to human blood. It's actually one molecule difference. You drop an iron molecule, you pick up a magnesium molecule, and you have blood. It's almost exactly the same. Same with minerals in our earth. Exactly the same as our own blood. So this wasn't done, everything is done purposefully, right? Everything was created and done this way on purpose. So greens are like a blood transfusion. So it's one of the fastest ways, juicing and detoxing and fasting. You want to get out of arthritic pain ASAP, go on a juice fast. Your arthritic pain will be gone before you can blink an eye. It'll blow you away at how fast you'll be out of pain. You take the burden off of the system, and you start getting a lot of the toxins out of the body that have been built up over time. So they cleanse the blood, and they reduce inflammation as well. So you can do vegetable juicing. You can eat fresh vegetables. You can get greens powders. There's all kinds of ways to get your greens in. Probiotics, number 5. So these are good, healthy bacteria. We're composed of trillions of living, healthy bacterial organisms. And that's key to the strong immune system. The gut, bacterial cultures in the gut, that's your immune system. I mentioned that specifically for anybody who's dealt with rheumatoid arthritis, because that's the weakness in the immune system. And so you want to build up strength in the immune system. And one of the best ways to do that is through probiotics and diet. And I'm going to give you some other strategies here. Got a few minutes left. One of the big ones, I talked about it a lot in the last class when we talked about sleep, is earthing, connected to the earth. Healthy cells, your body resonates at exactly the same frequency as the earth. So healthy cells in your body resonate exactly the same as healthy cells as the earth. So again, God's design. We were created naked in a garden. We were created to be on the earth. People feel better when they're connected to nature and they're in the woods and camping and bike riding and hiking and being in nature. And it'll get you out of pain. Earthing is a huge body of research right now. Huge, huge, huge. Because what's really cool is they've discovered this. And yes, get outside. Stand barefoot. Have a garden. You know, be outside as much as possible, connected to the earth that God placed you in upon creation. But also, they now have technology. You can actually connect to the earth inside your house. You can sleep on a mat that is connected to the ground, no electricity, connected to the ground wire of your outlet, and people sleep fantastic. People are getting out of pain. I love telling the story of the lady who came into my place who was 70, and she had this really bad pain behind her knee, and she'd had it for years. And just during class for a half an hour, had her take her shoes off, and she put her feet on this mat, and she goes, well, it might all be in my head, but I think that pain's gone. And she actually stood up, and she had no pain, and she did a little dance around the room. It was really cute. And she bought one of the mats, and the pain never came back. Never came back. And it was just that connecting to the earth resolved that pain. So earthing is a great tool. Connecting back to the earth is a great tool for getting out of pain. Systemic enzymes, this helps with all different types of pain, but very specifically, this is amazing for fibromyalgia. Anybody who's dealt with fibromyalgia, that buildup of that fibrin is a protein structure, and it builds up in the muscles, and the enzymes will actually go through and eat away that fibrin buildup and destroy the excess so that the muscles can start to function and work again without pain. So systemic enzymes are great for a lot of different types of pain. I mean, they're great for the heart and the cardiovascular system. So we know heart disease is related to chronic inflammation, which is related to pain, chest pain. So systemic enzymes are very, 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 very beneficial as well. Collagen. I had to make this fun. It's time to start making grandma's real chicken soup recipe again. Bone broth soups, chicken cartilage, the bones, the joints, the ligaments. The healthy part is the fats and the bones and the joints and the ligaments and the organ meats, more than the flesh. Thanksgiving's coming up. I love turkey, okay? I'm going to eat some turkey breast, but I'm telling you right now, the healthiest part of that turkey is the fat, the skin that we all throw away, the fat that floats on the top that grosses us out. That's where the healthy part is. That's what builds your joints. That's what repairs your collagen. That's what'll take bone-on-bone joint pain away and rebuild your cartilage. So in addition to eating your turkey, boil your bones and make some good turkey broth and make some soups out of that, because that's where the heavy-duty nutrition is. How many people are taking glucosamine supplements? I mean, everybody's crazy about glucosamine. Where does it come from? Where does it come from? It comes from this. It comes from cartilage. It comes from bones. It comes from chicken cartilage. It also comes from eggshells. Not saying go munch on eggshells, but you can throw them in soups, and you can extract the nutrients from eggshells into your soup, and you can get free hyaluronic acid that cushions the joints that people spend lots of expensive money on supplements. And supplements work. I mean, you can take hyaluronic acid and collagen and rebuild cartilage, rebuild bone on bone, even though you're told there's nothing you can do. You got bone on bone, there's nothing you can do. When it's bad enough, we'll do surgical repair. No. God created a body that heals itself. It's designed to heal and repair itself. And you can put things in your body that are the building blocks to repair itself. So collagen, that's a big one. Just so many people suffer from bone on bone, and they're told there's nothing they can do about cartilage. There absolutely is. Get the minerals and the fats and the building blocks and the collagen back into your system, and within 3 months, and at the most a year, 3 months to a year, you can completely rebuild cartilage that's gone, that's literally gone bone on bone. Number 4, antioxidants. Another big news subject. Astaxanthin, I still think, is the best known one right now, research-wise, for helping people with pain. I give it to a lot of people with pain. There's different formulas, joint formulas that use it. A lot of athletes use it because it helps cut recovery time. So it helps them restore their muscles much faster, and recovery time is much faster. They heal much faster from pain-related injuries due to sports. So antioxidants are great for that. I just listed some other ones. I'm a big fan of different herbs and spices that are anti-inflammatory. So using turmeric and ginger, oregano, cayenne peppers, I didn't put on the list, but that's a big one. Resveratrol from grapes, grape seeds, cinnamon, berries. All these are potent antioxidants, and all these can really, really help with pain. Magnesium and other minerals. Magnesium is not the only mineral we need, of course, but I highlight it because it's the number one deficiency, And it's the number one mineral I give to people, and I see immediately people get out of pain. Immediately. Knee pain, gone. Cramping, gone. Headaches, menstrual cramping around cycles, oftentimes gone. So many pain-related issues I've seen resolved just from doing something so simple, magnesium. I think it's important to do the right kind. I'm a big fan of magnesium chloride, and I like the foot baths as the most accurate delivery method. Taking baths in magnesium, is just awesome. And just the other side benefits you're going to get. Unfortunately, the drugs have the side effects. They cover up the pain, but you have the negative side effects. I like to talk about how these natural supplements, like the magnesium is going to take away the pain, but I got to tell you about the side benefits too. So sorry, I got to tell you about those too. So stress, less anxiety. You'll start sleeping better. You'll feel more calm and relaxed. So you get side benefits as opposed to side effects. It's the awesome thing about the natural things that God created. Deer antler. I mentioned this just because I've seen so many miraculous healings from it. Anybody in chronic pain, fibromyalgia, any nerve-related pain, any spinal-related pain, it actually regenerates the spine. So a lot of people that have really damaged disc or spinal conditions, deer antler is great for regenerating the nerve. It's one of the number one anti-aging things known about and used in Chinese medicine. It's been used over in Asia for centuries. Deer antler, very powerful for regrowing new joints, muscles, tissues, etc. Essential oils, very powerful gift from God. You're taking God's plants and you're concentrating them in an oil form that's extremely therapeutic. And I only mentioned 4 or 5, but there's 100. But lavender and peppermint and wintergreen and eucalyptus are some of the ones I mentioned, but immediately can help people get out of pain. So I highly encourage using those. And then I just want to give you a couple final thoughts. Have a long-term goal. I really want to stress the fact that pain is a signal. The body's sending you a signal if there's pain, that something's wrong. Getting out of pain is really, really, really important. But it's just the first step. And I'll give the example of, let's say somebody has a really bad gluten intolerance and they have celiac. I'm sure people here know people who've had celiac disease before. If they eat gluten, sometimes it's so painful, they're crippled over in pain, like abdominal pain, crippled over. It's that bad, just getting a little bit of gluten. The goal should be, how do I heal my body long term so that I don't have this issue, so that I don't have to worry about every little piece of every little thing I eat? Because they might be out of pain if they stay away from gluten, but as soon as they eat gluten again, they're in critical pain again. So we always want to focus on a long-term solution. Sometimes, and the chiropractors mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, we've lost 50 to 60% of our function before the body actually sends us a signal that, hey, there's pain here. So if you have pain in a knee, for example, you've already lost a great deal of function in that knee when the pain starts. So just getting out of pain, in other words, means you still have a ways to go in the healing. So that's why you want to have a long-term plan of eating well and incorporating some of these things into your long-term strategy, because just getting out of pain is just the beginning. So I just really, really want to stress that. Don't stop moving. Huge, 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 huge. People get arthritic pain and they stop moving. They stop moving their joints. They stop exercising. Big, big, big mistake. Now, you might have to alter the movements you do or alter your exercise or limit the amount you do, but don't stop moving. It's the worst thing you can do. You got to keep your joints moving. You got to keep the synovial fluid moving. You got to keep the nutrients moving through your ligaments and your joints and your bones, So keep exercising, just adjust. And the final thought I want to give you is get a pain plan, because there's so many different types of pain. Like I mentioned, there's rheumatoid arthritis, which is totally different than if you got in a car accident. So there's different varying degrees of pain, different types of pain, different severity of pain. You really need to get with someone who doesn't want to just cover up your pain, with whether it's even natural or a pharmaceutical drug. You can even go to natural therapists who'll be like, oh, well, you have pain. Well, instead of taking aspirin, take this white willow bark. I mean, that's great. It's a more natural alternative. It's a God-given plant. That's fantastic. But still, I would encourage you to just find somebody who can give you a long-term plan that incorporates a lot of these different ideas and thoughts, just to have you healthy long-term so you can live a nice, long, healthy, vibrant life with your families and with God and all he has purposed for you in this wonderful kingdom. So I think that is it. Amen. And we'll take some questions.
Can you say the name of that light that heals scars again? Or
It's just cold laser. Cold, like hot cold. Cold laser therapy is what they call it. Yep. I have one at the office. You can call me about it. I do it with people. Yeah.
Would you just elaborate a little bit on GMOs? I recently watched a video on genetically modified foods, and they were talking a lot about that being connected to gut health and just about everything.
Sure.
Would you just talk about how you feel about GMOs and...
Sure.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. So genetically modified foods are basically taking God's original design and altering it for man's benefit, either for control or for profit, or maybe the original intention was, for helping the things grow better, more efficiently, but it's turned into something much more evil than that. But genetically modified foods are, there's enough research out there to show that they're completely toxic. They cause infertility. They're not real. Anytime you design a plant not to reproduce itself, it's not of God. And it's basically forcing farmers to go buy seed from a company to generate money so that they, because the seed can't propagate itself, it can't, and if something can't reproduce itself, that's a bad situation. So there's a lot of negatives to genetically modified foods. I can give you all kinds of resources. There's Genetic Roulette you can watch. There's Seeds of Deception you can watch. There's actually a lot of new movies coming out about genetically modified foods. They're voting on it in California to label it. Genetically modified foods are illegal in many parts of the world. In America, not only is it not illegal, we're fighting just to get it put on a food label. How sad is that? So it's a big, big battle right now. But yeah, very, very dangerous. I've talked about it in some past classes, but the main things to avoid genetically modified foods, the main things you want to stay away from is all soy, corn, cotton, canola. Those are the big ones. Beets. So a lot of the sugar that we're getting, a lot of the white sugar and brown sugar and different types of sugar we're getting are from beets. Those are genetically modified. So those are the main things we want to stay away from.
Do you mind holding it for me? Thank you. I have a few questions. The one is, you mentioned fried foods. Are we not to fry anything at all?
Oh, you can fry some foods in healthy saturated fats, coconut oil and butter and stuff like that. Yeah, sure.
Is it meant to be at a low temperature?
Not necessarily. Yeah, okay. When I say fried food, I'm mostly talking about all the processed, French fries and donuts. Those are all fried in vegetable cooking oils and soy oil and stuff like that causes a lot of the damage. Mm-hmm. But if you fry some fish or some things in coconut oil once in a while, that's not going to be damaging.
Mm-hmm. I understand. What about fillings? Is it a good idea to get rid of all mercury fillings?
Absolutely. Yeah.
What is the alternative?
There's plastic composite you can get, and there's porcelain, which are much more expensive, but you can get alternatives. The plastic composite, you can get BPA free, so you don't get the bisphenol A, which is a estrogenic compound, but they have plastic composites now that are BPA free. So that's probably what I would recommend cost-wise. You can get that done for, I don't know, from what I've seen, about $150 a tooth. So if you get a couple done here and there, you know, over time, get them all replaced, it's definitely a good idea. Because that mercury, studies show that that will not leak into your bloodstream as long as you don't ever put anything hot in your mouth or chew anything. So if you can do that, that doesn't leak into your bloodstream. But otherwise, it's proven fact that that mercury is constantly leaking into your body. So
how can we cleanse the body from that poison?
there's a couple things. I actually have done whole classes on heavy metals you could watch online. But there's just a lot of specific things that cleanse heavy metals out of the body. Different types of zeolites and clays and chlorella and cilantro, a lot of natural things. There's a whole host of things, but there are things you can do to absolutely get mercury out of your body, yes.
You mentioned supplement, mineral supplement. Are you able to say what is a good mineral supplement?
What is a good mineral supplement?
Yeah.
There's lots of different ones. I mean, I'm big on plant-based minerals. So those are the mainly ones I give to my clients are plant-based minerals. The magnesium, I think, is very important. Mineral drops, there's ocean mineral drops by Trace Minerals Research, concentrates mineral drops you can just add to water. A good sea salt is a great mineral supplement. Good quality sea salt or the Himalayan rock salt. So any type of natural minerals.
And what are naturally foods that contain these natural minerals?
Well, all of your whole foods are going to contain minerals. Your most dense mineral foods are going to be fermented foods, like kimchi and sauerkraut and kefirs, and these kind of fermented foods just skyrocket the mineral intake into the body. So the fermented foods are huge. Your sea vegetables are huge mineral sources. So like kombu and kelp and dulse and nori and all these sea vegetables because they get all the minerals from the ocean. Your green leafy vegetables are all very nutrient dense. So those would all be some good high mineral source foods.
Thank you. Last question. Cocoa is rich in caffeine. Is that a problem?
Raw cacao does have some caffeine, so you can overdo it. However, I think it's one of the healthiest foods on the planet, and it's one of the most potent antioxidants on the planet, and it can help you with pain because of its antioxidant effect, but it's got to be the raw cacao in its raw form.
I have 3 questions. The first one is that you mentioned beets. What about homegrown beets?
Oh, yeah,
GMO?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm just talking about the genetically modified ones. About 50%, about half of beets are genetically
The
modified
ones you
now.
buy in the grocery store? are you
Very well
talking
could be,
about?
yes.
I mean, I usually see them in an organic form in the grocery store. Otherwise, I
If
grow
they're
them.
organic, no. If they're organic, they can't be genetically modified right now.
Okay, I don't. Yeah. Anyway. Okay. Number 2, you didn't cover menstrual pain.
Right.
Okay. My daughter deals with that a lot. Number 3.
Okay.
Arthritic. Joints being already deformed from arthritis. Can
Right.
that be helped to get better?
Yes, absolutely. So she asked if deformed joints can get better. Yeah, usually that's calcium buildup. So it's calcification, usually, in the joints. So what we have to do is we have to displace the calcium. What's the main thing that displaces calcium? Magnesium. So you want to start doing lots of magnesium and do things that break down calcium in the body, which is MSM, which is sulfur, which is Shankapiedra, which is stone breaker, which is an herb. And there's other herbs that break down calcification and different types of minerals that help offset and break down calcification.
So the deformed joints can be restored, at least to some
They
degree.
absolutely can.
And it sounds like it's a little complicated. Probably should be.
Yeah, there's
done
some
under
things,
supervision.
multiple things you need to do. Yeah, and then with menstrual cramps, yeah, I mean, there's hormonal-related cycle pain that a lot of women have, and that again, that's a more complicated subject. Estrogen, progesterone imbalances, mineral deficiencies. Magnesium helps with that a lot, but a lot of times it's just the
It's a little
hormonal
more.
imbalances.
It's a little more complicated.
It's a little more complicated.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Did you say soy meal is it okay? Soy meal, organic soy meal, is it good or not?
No.
No,
I'm not a fan of any type of soy milk or tofu.
even though organic.
Organic doesn't matter.
But
Soy is still estrogenic, and soy is still promoted as a health food when it's not a health food.
But I read different article. Some they said women need some different some kind of soil from the estrogen. Is it
Yeah,
from
it's estrogenic. It causes hormone imbalances. Animal studies show animals consuming soy within 3 generations are infertile in every study. Causes infertility because it causes hormone problems. It destroys the thyroid gland and the glandular system. The soy that is confusing because the soy that has been eaten over in Asia for hundreds of years is fermented soy, natto and tempeh. And they fermented it for 6 months, and they ate it as a condiment, and they ate a little bit on their plate. Never, ever, ever did they eat soy milk and soy burgers and tofu and all that stuff until we started doing it here in America and started promoting that it was a health food, but it never has been. That's only recent. Soy is very, very dangerous food to consume, in my opinion. Yes?
I have a question about infections. Most doctors say take antibiotics, but I was just wondering if there's a natural way to destroy infections without antibiotics.
Oh, absolutely. But that's really going to be a pretty long talk. I mean, infections are, the short answer is yes, absolutely 100%. I mean, did God not give us things that knock infections out of the body? I mean, yeah, he's given us garlic and oregano and colloidal silver and essential oils and, minerals and healthy fats. And there's hundreds and hundreds of things that knock infections out of the body. Problem with antibiotics is it's a non-exclusive killer. It kills everything good and everything bad. So it knocks out the infection, but it weakens your body at the same time. So your body just gets weaker and weaker and more susceptible to more infections. So we have to build the body. The best way to have a strong immune system is to build the body so that it can't tolerate infections, as opposed to tearing it down with antibiotics that it gives short-term relief and then having it come back worse. So does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, about the scars, can stretch mark scars be an issue?
That's a little different. Usually it's actually when there's physical damage to the skin surface. Stretch marks aren't going to cause that type of interference. Usually we're talking a surgical scar
Okay.
or something where the skin was literally physically cut. Okay?
Do you recommend eating seafood even though it contains mercury?
Yes.
And if so, how much is safe?
I think that's blown out of proportion. There's always been some trace of mercury in our food. If you look way back when, decades ago, there's always been traces of mercury in our food. I could be totally off base here, but I'm just, from having done this with years and worked with thousands of people, I've never met someone who has a mercury toxicity because they ate fish. Now, you'll hear about it a million times. I've never met somebody. I've never read an article about it. It's just something you hear about. And I'm not saying mercury doesn't exist in seafood. I'm not saying there's not toxins in our sea and in seafood. There absolutely is. What I will tell you is this. Eat fish. The smaller the fish, the lower on the food chain, the less chance of toxicity. Right? So sardines and anchovies, you're not going to find mercury. You move up the fish scale ladder, up to giant tuna, okay, maybe they've accumulated some mercury over time because they're gigantic and they've eaten all these other fish, and maybe. I just really haven't seen it be a big issue. I really think it's blown out of proportion. I really do. I could be wrong. I really could be wrong on that. But I've just never seen it be a big issue. I would not be scared of eating fish. I'm not scared of eating fish because of mercury. My wife's pregnant, and I would not say, don't eat fish, there might be mercury. I just really am not concerned about it. So.
So one more question on the soy.
Uh-huh.
You know, there was a season when it just came out so strongly that it was good. If you gave it to your kids, is there like permanent damage, or can it be reversed?
It depends on how much and how long. You know, if you've started your children on soy formula as an infant and for 5-10 years you thought soy was healthy, yeah, there can be some long-term repercussions to that. If you gave your kids soy for 6 months or a year, a couple of years, and they're young, I mean, it's probably not going to be a big deal if you can get them off it, but it just definitely causes long-term damage to the hormonal system and specifically the thyroid gland. It's hard to know for sure. You know, it's hard to know for sure unless there's symptoms or something that would, you know, yeah, it's hard to know.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Let's do just like 2 more maybe.
Just was going to ask you about the probiotics. Do you, is there certain brands that are better than others? Do you have suggestion on that, and the amount that you take?
Great question. There's 3 main different types. You have your fermented vegetables. So that's your sauerkraut and your kimchi, and you can ferment anything, any vegetable. And you can ferment your own. You can get culture starter kits and start your own. I'm a big fan of Body Ecology program. So that's a good resource for you, bodyecology.com. She has starter kits, and you can make your own fermented veggies. And there's a local gal here, Cultured Food Life. She has a website, Donna Schwenk. And she'll teach you how to make fermented foods. But there's 3 main categories: the fermented veggies, your kombucha, which is is a bacterial culture, and your kefirs and yogurts and those kind of things. They're all incredible. They all provide different strains of healthy bacteria, so it's good to get a little bit of maybe each one. Some people do have dairy intolerances, even to fermented, so you have to be careful if you have a kind of a gut issue or a weakness. But a good recommendation, like what Body Ecology recommends, is about 1/4 cup of fermented foods with each meal to help with the digestion of the food, assimilation of nutrients. It increases the mineral intake. It helps you absorb your food better. Just a whole host of benefits. So yeah, those 3 main types. Always want to get it raw. So like buying yogurt and kefir in the grocery store is just not going to be that great. You really want to get the kefir grains from someone, get some raw milk. You can make water kefir. You can make coconut kefir. You can make dairy kefir. You can make it out of goat's milk. You can make it out of cow's milk. You can make it out of sheep's milk. Heck, you could probably make it out of any animal's milk. But yeah, I mean, so I encourage you to try all of them and always get them in their rawest form. And you can definitely make your own. It's more cost effective. Sure. Last one.
Yes, if I walk a couple miles, my hip gets dull pain, and what should I do about that? And then also a friend of mine has fibromyalgia, gets knots, and has to have saline injections. Is there anything else she can do?
Well, the fibromyalgia we kind of covered. You know, we talked about how it's a buildup of toxins in the muscles. I talked about the systemic enzymes, how those eat up the scar tissue. So that's the number one thing I give people with fibromyalgia is the magnesium and the systemic enzymes to help clean up the scar tissue, and then make sure they're not eating inflammatory foods. And usually just those simple things, people with fibromyalgia, even chronic fibromyalgia, within 3 months should have no pain, just with those simple things. As far as your hip goes, you know, it's again, it's hard to know. You have to know what's going on with your hip. You know, it's hard to know. We'd have to probably talk more about it and dig a little bit deeper. So, all right. Well, thanks, guys.